Welcome back. Today we're working on a 2005 Suzuki Vinson foot shift model. That's the LTF500F. It's been a good four-wheeler. I can't speak enough about it. As you can see, 10,000 miles, almost 1,400 hours on it. And the issue today is carburetor related. So, the problem we're having is when you turn the fuel on, it just continues to overflow out of the carburetor when it's on the prime setting of the petcock. And that could be a couple things. It could be a float with a hole in it or stuck, not allowing the needle and seat to do its job. It could be a wore out seat on the needle. I'm out of other ideas as to what it could be. So what we're going to end up doing is tearing this thing down. We'll go in from the top, pull the carburetor out, and we'll take it over to the bench, pull it apart, and see what we find in there. As a cheap, semi-cheap, the parts weren't too bad, option, I went ahead and ordered a float, a needle and seat, and yeah, we'll go ahead and test if that float's got a hole in it. It's pretty simple to do. You just submerge it in a cup of water, see if there's any bubbles, or if it's a tiny pinhole, you can let it sit for a little bit, pull it out and shake it. But I'll show you all that when we end up doing it. But if you look, I put it on the prime because this is a diaphragm style fuel pump. It runs off of a pulse signal. If you put it on the prime setting, and if we look in there, you can see it. You can see it trickling on the starter motor. Video light quality is kind of crappy. Let me see if I can get a light on. There you go. You can see it coming out of the overflow on the bottom of the carburetor, dripping right down onto that positive connection on the starter. Which, gasoline and electricity, there shouldn't be anything wrong with that. But because it's for my father, we'll go ahead and see if we can fix this for him. All right, start by taking the seat off. Like I said, this is an older bike. There's a lot of wore out parts on it. Some of it will be addressing, some of it will just be looking the other way. I've got a new boot for the Airbox breather. So we'll start taking the Airbox lid off. It's got a little push pin over here, but it's got the quick release design. Just go like that, it rips right off.
That would be one way to do it.
And while we're at it, we'll put a new air filter in here for him. So I'll go ahead and start taking this Airbox out. You've got right here between the frame, you got a 10mm bolt holding it on this side. And I believe there's one more. Yes, down here on the bottom. Not hard to see. Right down there, there's another bracket with a 10mm bolt holding this thing on. So I'll get those bolts removed. And we'll come around to this side, which we'll be able to access by pulling this off or up out of the way. If you're not familiar with these plastic push pins, they pop up and you can feel it click. If you keep pulling, it'll pull out all the way. Not a big deal. They just slide right back in. But I only pull them out to the end. A little screwdriver under there and they pull right out. Now that that's removed, we're going to go ahead and pull these black side panels off. It'll be easier. Probably just this side. Be easier to see everything, not have to dig. I've had this carburetor out multiple times over the years. So let's pull that pin right there. You got another pin below it. And it's got a bunch of hooks that just hook into the plastic here. You can see one there. It's got one back there. You got another push pin here. And we already pulled the push pin holding the breather tube on. We'll get this side panel off. All right, we got the side panel off. Nice and disgusting underneath. And doesn't give us a crazy amount of room, but now we can somewhat see what we're working with. Be able to bend this piece out of the way a little bit to access some of the hose clamps, which we'll get to later. But now you got this tight 10mm head bolt on this side. And they gave us so much room to get to it. I'm going to use a ratchet end wrench, get it loosened up, and use our fingers the rest of the way. I got that broke free. And on this side, we could use the wrench the same way, but it looks like I can come in from around the back of the airbox to reach the head of that bolt. So now we got that bolt out. Next step is to loosen the hose clamp on the carburetor side, or you can do it from this one. This one has in the past proved kind of a pain in the butt to get back on. Not impossible. And you can come in from this side. No, not really. You can kind of see the hose clamp on the back side of it, screws on the top. But if you can get a stubby screwdriver in there, work that hose clamp off. But for some reason, it's already loose, not even connected. That's probably why he said it was running a little rough. You can see. So that'll probably make things a lot better. And hopefully this thing will just pull out the top. I'll be really gentle with it. And just like that. I'm sure installation will be just as easy. Set it over to the side with the rest of our stuff. Now we got full access to the back side of this carburetor. My next step is going to be the front hose clamp, which the screw side is on the opposite side of the machine, the screw head. Go around the side. And yeah, you can see it right in there. Sorry, lighting kind of sucks. But it's dangling down right there. So that's a Phillips head screw. You get a long screwdriver and loosen that up. I've got it kind of angled. Come back around to the side I've got exposed. Grab the carburetor, just wiggle and pull. It releases. All right, so I got the fuel line pulled off. I'm able to pull the carburetor back just a hair more. We'll flip it on its side. And this black plastic plate right here has one Phillips head screw. Pull that off to expose throttle cable linkage. And we'll disconnect that. So, all right, now that I have use of both my hands, what I'll do is I'll push the throttle lever on the handlebars to bring that butterfly all the way open. And then we'll hold this with our finger, and it releases the spring tension to where we can take like a flathead screwdriver or your fingernails or whatever you've got, pull that cable around. And now I can see that you can't see what I'm doing. Let's start over. There. Open it. Hold that with your hand. Work this spring around, or work this cable around where it lines up with the groove in the bottom. It's kind of a pain in the butt to hold it and remove the throttle cable from its little holder in this butterfly. Now we have that off. We've got another 10mm nut, jam nut, on top of the carburetor that we have to loosen to be able to get the throttle linkage off of the carburetor completely. So just take an open end wrench, loosen this nut on the top. I try not to adjust anything but this top nut. That way we don't change our throttle linkage settings, the load it has on this cable, the adjustment it has on it. If you do, it's not the end of the world. You have a lot of adjustments, not only here, but up at the handlebars. So now we got the throttle linkage off. Now we can get this almost all the way out, if not all the way out. Be able to see what we're doing. By the way, I do have this plastic piece held back with a bungee cord. So now that we have the carburetor out, we're after this choke cable. You've got a plastic nut style thing, deal, whatever. We've got to unscrew this. So believe it or not, I'm sure it's not the right way to do it. but what I've found works best is needle nose pliers. They're not on there very tight, these plastic nuts. You just grip it and start working it. Yeah, now it's gonna make me a liar. There we go. Now it's out. Not very many threads. And there's your choke. So we'll go over to the bench. We'll get this broke down and see what's causing the issue. All right, carburetor's out. It's on the bench. Oh, we've got it. We'll blow some carb cleaner and compressed air through the jets, through passages. Just make sure it's clean while we have it out. It was a pain in the butt to get it out. Got a little bit of carburetor cleaner here. If I remember correctly, all you're going to need is a Phillips head. First time I ever took this apart, I did need an impact screwdriver or vice grips, the needle nose vice grips. These screws on the bottom of the bowl, oh nice, get gas all over that, that'll be good. Like to get seized up or stuck, and they love to strip out. Take your time with these. Like I said, if you can get vice grips on the heads, it helps tremendously. A little tap with a hammer, brass punch, just to free up all the crud. I'm sure you got plenty of rags. I eat the finish off the workbench. Get the idle adjustment bracket off. That was held on by two screws on right here that I took off, obviously. And the last screw. Sometimes these bowls can be stuck on, just crud builds up around the rubber gasket on the inside. It's not terrible. A little bit of junk. Seen a lot worse. And here's our float. With the float, it has a pin right here. It's not really pressed in. You can take a pair of needle nose, or sometimes you get lucky with your fingernails and grab it, slide it out. Here's the needle. Rubber on the needle still looks good. Little spring on top of the needle. Still working. So pushing it in there. And here's the float. I bet this thing was just hung up. Not seeing any real signs. You can see where the gas has been sitting, where the level has come up to. I'm going to get a container of water, stick it in there, and check it for leaks. All right, I got a 5-gallon bucket of water, float, throw it in there. Floats. I'll take something weighted. I found a big nut. That's what she said. I set it on top of the float somehow. Hold it down. There we go. The nut's holding it underwater. I don't see any air bubbles right off the rip, but it could be teeny tiny. Could be nothing at all. Could have just been stuck, which is still my guess. And we'll come back in a little bit after we're done cleaning the carburetor and see if it has any water in it. All right, back to disassembly. Got another little diaphragm in here with a spring behind it. It's got a little bit of tension. So take the one screw out. Keep your finger or your thumb on the cover while you undo the other screw. I just slowly let it off. There we go. Like it, that spring will fly out if you're not careful. It's a cover. Here's a diaphragm, which might be leaking. Not seeing any tears in it. It is wet though. Yeah, I don't see any tears. Just leave that alone. I'm not going to pull this whole throttle plate off the side. Really no need, I don't think. I'm going to pull the cover off the top here. And you want to keep your finger on top of this. There is a spring underneath it. Not as strong as the other one. So get the spring out. I have replaced this before. That's why it looks nice and not all stretched and wore out. Be careful with this rubber, don't want to tear it. Like I said, it's not the cheapest. Nice and gentle, this pulls right out. Everything in here looks good. It's a little dirty. But yeah, I'll pull these jets out. For the jets, 8mm wrench, socket, whatever, flathead screwdriver. You got a little jet on top of the main dealio right there. I know that is the technical term. It looks good. Even on the camera, you can see we got light through that thing. We got the secondary, or second jet here. Can't see it on the camera. Maybe you can, but I can see light through it. Most of the time, these do not come out this easy. I've had them out in the past. Take 8mm. And screw it. You got all these teeny tiny little pinholes on the side. You want to make sure those are clean. What I found works best is if you have an old, or even new grill wire brush for like scrubbing your barbecue grill, take one of those bristles off and you can poke it right through here. Most times they will fit. I do have a cheapy tool that I use that has a little, I don't know, bristles or little wires that are small enough to go through those holes. I'll look down in here. I don't see anything obvious, nothing crazy. So what I like to do, all the holes, take carburetor cleaner with the straw. It's all of them. Don't hold your face directly over it. This shit gets in your eye, it burns. You got little holes in the front here. Nothing on that side. You got the little hole over here. Take the jets. You can hold your finger over the end. You can see it coming out of those little holes on the sides. And the straw fits conveniently in the end of these things. And I know this carburetor is clean. I cleaned it not too long ago. He uses non-ethanol fuel. But if it was dirty enough, I would take compressed air, little rubber tip on the end, and you can take it and blow through all your stuff with your compressed air. A little O-ring right there. I'm surprised we didn't lose that. Pull that out. Blow through the holes. And I can hear and feel the air coming out on opposite sides, opposite ports. Another one up top. And this one was not bad. This one wasn't even dirty. It wasn't having a running issue, but that's how I clean every carburetor I do. The best part is the best thing to do is if you have like an ultrasonic cleaner, which is next on my list. website out there starts with a V. Has a nice one. Watch other YouTubers have it. It's, I want to say 150 bucks, something like that. 10 liter tank, about yay big, and you can fit a car carburetor in it, like a Holly 4-barrel or something like that. But I've used those in the past. I've even used the Harbor Freight ultrasonic cleaners, and they're for like weed eaters and small engines, and they have really good results, especially when they have heat. So we'll start putting this thing back together. I do have a new O-ring for the bowl gasket. As you can tell, it's already not wanting to sit. Well, maybe it is. But the first time I've ever taken one of these off, these love to shrink. And you can already see this guy doesn't want to sit in its home anymore. So I've got a new O-ring. I've got a new float. I've got a new needle, because I do not want to be back in this, at least for another year or so. As long as he takes care of it, does what he's supposed to do. So we'll start back up on the top. You take your valve piston, as Suzuki calls it, and great. That's right. I don't think this is directional. I have no idea. See how it fits. So you got a needle on the bottom. It's going to line up with the hole in the throat right there. So you'll line up your slide up top, which, yes, it is directional. It will not fit this way. We'll spin it around and make sure that that needle drops in that hole, which goes right on in. And then you take your diaphragm, make sure your diaphragm, the O-ring built into it, sits in the groove. If you pinch it, it will damage it, it will leak, it will not run worth a crap. You take the spring we pulled out, the long one, you got, not that one, that goes in the bottom. The long one goes right in the top. You can see the plastic spring holder. Slide that right on top. Take your plate, and you can see it's got little prongs that the spring rides in. Set that in there like so. Right down on top. And out of all the screws we just pulled out, you should have, I think, 9. These are the shorties. Little short screws. All right, top's back together. Go to the bottom side. I'm not even looking this up. This goes in here. Your needle from that piston valve, or the slide, this goes inside of it. You can see the needle poking through there. This goes right in there. Oh, before I forget, poke this with our little pokey dealie. I'll show you what it is. All right, I picked this up on Amazon. Paid like 35 cents. No, I don't know what I paid for it. I just searched carburetor cleaner. And you've got this assortment of little like pipe cleaner looking things. It's one of the few Wang Pao items I bought that actually works pretty good. So you take the smallest one or the biggest one that'll fit in the hole, and it's serrated on the edges. I don't know if it'll pick it up, but anyway, I'm gonna take my word for it. You just run them through the holes. Like I said, if you can't wait on one, don't want to buy one, bristle out of a grill brush or a wire brush works great. But you can see I'm getting a little bit of buildup on my fingers. You can see a little bit of the white specks. I don't know, might not come out. It's covered in grease and dirt and yuck. So we ran it through all of them, I think. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. I know it's clean. I'll thread this on by hand until it's snug. Take a wrench or socket, turn it just a hair, just until it's nice and snug. Don't want to strip that out. And then you got 2 different jets. One's going to be a big hole, one's going to be a small hole. Your bigger hole is going to go here, your smaller hole is going to go on this side. Yeah, we got the main jet, 128, screws into the brass piece we just inserted. I started by hand. Take the other jet, smaller one, and it goes right next to it. The flathead screwdriver, I'm just going to make them snug. These jets are relatively inexpensive. I think this is the second set I've bought for it. The first set, when I took them out, I tore them to hell. Had to use the pliers to get them out because they are brass. They're not the strongest. Brass is soft. So we got those in, snug down. And we'll put the diaphragm back on the side. This goes with the nipple down plunger, whatever it is. The little O-ring we removed goes right up top here. There's an indent for it. It pops in. And the cap, you see how it has the spot for that O-ring on the top. You take this spring, it sets out here on this plate inside the diaphragm, and there's a little nipple inside that spring lines up on. Push this down, line it up over your screw holes, hold it with your thumb, it wants to move, and it takes 2 of those short screws at either side while we're holding it down. Got it held down with the screws, tightened by hand. Same thing, just tightening down snug. You don't want to strip them out. You don't want them to come out either. All right, that's back together. Move on to the bottom. All right, reassembly on the bottom side. Got a new bowl gasket, part number, genuine Suzuki part. Got a new needle. We got a new float. We'll check in a minute and see if that other float was leaking or not. Take the new float. And we need the needle also. We're also going to need the old needle, because God forbid they send us the little clip for the top of it. That just pops off the top. It slides around that raised edge, like so. Take your float, it orients in the carburetor like this. Take our needle, slide that metal hanger up over top of that tab, drop it down, and line it up with the needle up with the fuel inlet. And then take the pin and push it in, line it up so it's flush on either side. All done. New bowl gasket. Get rid of the old one. This only goes on one way. See how the hump on the bottom has a slight curve on the right side of it. It goes in there. One trick is you can put a little bit of like grease, some kind of grease that's dissolvable by gasoline, into the groove here to hold it. If you don't have a new O-ring, and a lot of times these like to stretch, one trick I found works sometimes is take this and set it in the freezer. Put it on top of something cold in your freezer, come back a half hour later, it might have shrunk up a little bit, might not, but I've had it work in a pinch in the past. Because sometimes you go to do this and don't think you're going to need one, but most times I've found I will need one. So we'll take the carburetor like this. To retain this gasket will come on from the bottom. It has little tabs, the raised tabs, and recessed tabs that the bowl will fit into. So it's like that. The gasket's not pushing out. Go upside down. I'm still holding pressure on this bowl. We'll take our long screws, being mindful that we're not going to put the screws in underneath where this goes, the idle adjustment bracket. The idle adjustment bracket's going to lay like that. So we'll put a screw in this corner. Now that's holding it down for us. We'll line our idle adjustment plate. Start that screw. And the next one. And then one more. Would not be complete without losing one. Amazing. Found it. Little magnetic trays work great for small parts. I only have like 4 of them, so why use it? Tighten these down snug. Don't want to strip them out. That's it. It's all back together. Go ahead and reassemble this on the machine. Real quick, I pulled this out, and as soon as I pulled the nut off of it, it came right to the top. Put it next to my ear, I shook it around. I didn't hear any water inside it. This float was probably good. It was probably just hung up, but it is, what is it now? 19 years old. So wouldn't hurt. So we'll go reverse of disassembly. Goes like this. And we'll start with the choke. Since that's what we took off last, we'll put it on first. It's got a little O-ring. Line it up. Does pivot. And it's kind of tight. I've put a new grommet on here in the past, so it doesn't help out. But actually, it's working by just spinning the grommet. Nice and snug. Don't want to over tighten it. They are just plastic threads. So now that we've got it on there, we'll go back a little lower to where would we take off next? The throttle linkage will go on next. Take our throttle cable. Not a lot of room. What I like to do is hook it in here first and then wrap it around. So we hook it in its little home. Let it wrap around the guide. Then we'll pop it in place. We'll hold up on this. I know it moved a little, so we'll see what kind of play we have. Just want a tiny bit of play in that throttle. You see the cable kind of moving when I tap the throttle, and barely pushing it, it starts to open. So I'm happy with that. We can adjust it later on if we need to, but I'm not going to. So tighten that top nut. We'll grab our 10 millimeter and 10 millimeter and an 8 millimeter. The 8 millimeter will hold this guy, and the 10 we can tighten down our nut without changing any of the adjustment. just like that. And adjustment's still good. You take the cover. It's got a tab on the bottom and a tab on the top. Or I'm sorry, I had it around. Tab on the bottom that locks in, and this covers up the throttle assembly, the nut assembly up here. So take it, line it up in the bottom, pivots on, cover just like that. Take the screw that we lost earlier, and it down there. We still got the 6-foot screwdriver over here. Tighten that down. Everything on these machines is just snug in these carburetors. That's it. And we will fight this back into place. So we're going to spin it back straight the way it was. You also have a vacuum line up here. I don't know if you can see it. It's nice and cut and broken, but it does work. I know it does work. So make sure we pop that back on. The top of the carburetor, there's a nipple, a little brass nipple right there that pops on top of. Don't forget that. We'll pop this on. The carburetor does have little alignment dowels on the side of it. You want to line up with that boot. Go around to the other side, see if we can see it. All right. So if you take and you see those little fingers, there's a metal groove that lines up with the carburetor. You can see it just popped right into it, right there. That tells you you're oriented correctly. And once that pushes in, that's as far as it'll go. And we'll tighten that Phillips head screw, tighten that clamp down, and we'll be done on this side. Now we got that clamp tightened down. Go ahead and hook our fuel line back up, because before we get too far ahead, I want to see if the leak is gone. So I got the fuel line hooked up. Let's see if it's leaking. I'm not seeing nothing. Looking good. I'm going to leave this on prime and come back to it in a few minutes. If it's not leaking, great. Did what we set out to do. All right, no leaks. It's been about 20 minutes. I'm happy with it. There's that nipple right on top of that boot. It's dry. So we'll go to the Airbox. Release our bungee cord. This will bend right back down eventually, whatever. Take the Airbox, make sure your hose clamp on the tube is loose. And this is going to fish in some way or another. Down in there. Nice. Make sure we reconnect the oil breather. It's coming right out the top of the motor, plugs into this boot here. PCV, whatever it is. I don't know what they call it on this. But just like that, it's back on. Got our bolts. Take the boot, work it on from one side to the other so it's on nice and flat. And you've got a Phillips head on top there. And we'll go. Might be easier just to spin that down. Tighten it like that. All right, what I ended up having to do to get that boot to stay on, because when I would tighten the hose clamp down, it would keep pushing that boot off, is I loosened this hose clamp and allowed it, the whole assembly to rotate to where it wanted to fit on there. So now I'm going to go back underneath and tighten that hose clamp up. And then we'll tighten the 2 bolts fully on the sides of the airbox, the one there and the one down at the bottom. All right, while we're here, we'll go ahead and replace the air filter. It's not making a very tight seal. All we're going to need is a Phillips head, a little bracket in the back. Loosen the screw. Pull the bracket out. The entire air filter comes out as an assembly. Pull that off, set it to the side so we can lose it later. Pull a little cone out. Take the new air filter. See, the air filter has a little hole in the back of it and a big hole in the front of it. You take the cone, the nipple goes towards the back of the filter and it'll pop out here. The whole point of this is to hold that air filter tight against the front of the box. Now we have the cone in there. Line this up with the raised edge, pop it over top, take the retainer, it goes on the little nipple popped out of the back of the filter, pushes against. It's going to be tight. You want it to be tight. You don't want any dirt getting in. And tighten the screw down. Make sure this is nice and straight in line with the filter. And that's it. Got a good seal all the way around. And now all we have left is the airbox lid, which we have to replace this boot. Lid, tube. Here's the new boot. They were nice enough to send it with new clamps. This is aftermarket. Normally I like OEM parts, but not when this was 10 bucks and this is like almost 40. So just a Phillips head. Loosens the clamp. Yeah, this thing is done. Take the airbox side, which doesn't matter which side you use over here. Oh, that's going to be fun to get that clamp on there. But looks like it's on all the way. Take this clamp, open it up all the way. See if we can get it on without completely opening it. Yeah, there we go. Just tighten down nice and snug. And there's the bottom side. We'll go ahead and put this cover on. And then we'll do the tube wherever it lines up. So tabs go in the sides, the lid closes down. Take our tube, put our clamp on first. Just like that. And wherever this wants to live, line up this screw with this hole. It looks pretty good. Take the clamp. Snug it down. Brand new tube. Go ahead and put this side cover on and we're done. Side cover's on. Took 2 seconds. You got a pin there, there, and a screw that does nothing. These are broken. You got your vent tube, comes around and just pops in there. I guess. I don't know. That looks good. See if it runs. Choke's on. Oh, nice. Need both hands. Might have the idle turned up a little high. Adjust that down. Adjust that down with the idle screw right there. There you have it. Quick carburetor rebuild, or not rebuild, I should say. Quick carburetor cleaning. A few new parts, new boot, new air filter. It's not hard. Tight would be an understatement. But my best advice is just be gentle with the stuff. Not saying you can't replace it if you mess it up, but it is freaking expensive. Thanks for watching. Leave me some comments. Anything I did wrong, anything you suggest I do better. Yeah, see you all in the next one.